to understand also the mission of the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub. We are kind of the central platform of energy poverty expertise in Europe. And with the conference yesterday that was attended by European Commission, of course, members of the European Economic and Social Committee members of DG Energy, also of the Joint Research Center, NGOs, and so on. You can see them here in the slide. It's really a platform to channel the results and the needs and the challenges ahead of us for our brighter future. And there has been 9 national events beforehand, really dealing on the ground on energy poverty. And we have been channeling them. And today we're going to look at specific questions that we have asked all the national antennas of us that were regarding the challenges, so the solutions and also the policy ideas. So we specifically asked the antennas that the challenges, so what are the primary barriers identified that hinder efforts to address energy poverty in local communities and regions, but also what are the solutions. So we asked them specifically if they reflect on your local experiences, but also insights gained during the national events, what specific actions, tools, but also support instruments are crucial at the local level to really effectively address energy poverty, as highlighted also by the participants and different stakeholders, but also the policy ideas. So we asked them, if you are handed the keys to reshape energy poverty in your locality, what are the game-changing policy maneuvers? And what kind of proposals would you make for having a brighter future? So we were looking really for, let's say, visionary ideas to revolutionize the ways to combat energy poverty. So I'm happy that today we have some of the results represented by Ecoservice from Spain. Marta Garcia is here with us. Then IS4 from Italy with Marina Valvesi, and Southeast Energy Agency in Ireland by Colin Healy, and also Cyprus Energy Agency from Cyprus, represented also by Marina, but her last name is Curiao. So I would give the floor directly to our speakers. So Marta, would you, first it's Marina. Could you please guide us through the results from Ireland? Colin, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Third time's a charm.
Sorry.
So some of the challenges that we found within the policy regulation is the current energy poverty action plan doesn't have specific plans for energy poverty. The current action plan doesn't have specific plans for energy poverty. There's no standard for energy efficiency, and there's no measure to alleviate energy poverty. Some of the funding available has very almost arbitrary limitations and complications within long-term funding. There's a difficulty to access these grants. The information out there isn't very coherent. A lot of the grants are too low. There's a lack of a stream to low interest loans, which I'll revisit in policy ideas. And there's a difficulty in getting these kind of grants and these mortgages. There's also a lot of behavioral and cultural factors, especially in more rural areas of Ireland. You would have this very close bond with the land and the turf, and trying to move people away from cutting their own turf and developing their own fuel into more greener fuels and into kind of better energy standards is difficult. There's also lack of awareness around these kind of behaviors that people can adopt themselves to reduce energy poverty. A lot of the houses, especially in some of the urban areas in Ireland, can be very poor quality. They could have been built 60 to 80 years ago. They're terrace houses, and it would be awkward to actually get in and do deep retrofits into these houses. You also have, so we have the energy rating, the BER system here, but I think at about 16 to 17% of houses are actually BER exempt, which means they're so low they don't come onto that rating. And if you're BER exempt, you actually don't qualify for a lot of grants to do retrofit works because you need a BER rating within your applications. There's a difficulty in getting data. Some individuals don't want to share data. They're afraid it might affect their bills, or they're wondering what it's being used for, and there's a bit of mistrust there as well. And then limited resource and capacity. There's a lack of professional workers and contractors actually able to do these sort of thermal envelope works. So some of the policy ideas we have that would improve this: the energy performance contract for poor households. This will sound something very normal in Europe. I think it's called the ESCO or ESCO. Ireland doesn't have one of these. So the contractors don't really want to do a lot of these works in the more low income areas, because if the materials get expensive and the house can't pay, there is no guarantor in the middle who will step in and give the loan to the households. So what we would recommend is a middle guarantor, probably a government body or a credit union or a bank, that would be able to step in should the household be unable to afford the works, and offer low interest loans. The other one, the energy retrofit program, would be a way to give technical advice and a grant for single measure retrofits. So currently in Ireland, all of the grants are for deep retrofits, which is a full change. You have your insulation, windows, doors, heat pumps, boilers, PV even. We would recommend that people are allowed to just do single measures, just your windows and doors. Currently, there's no grants for that. Policy integration coordination. So this is a recommendation that came from one of our local authorities, where they suggested that energy poverty needs to work interdepartmentally. So currently, energy poverty is only covered in the energy sector of government, but it needs to go into social and housing and climate as well. And they recommend it should be included within the CCAPs to encourage this sort of cross-departmentalizing of energy poverty. And then community energy hubs. This, I think, would be a really good way to alleviate a lot of the issues on the ground around energy poverty, of setting up these hubs where you can have paid people that can guide households and individuals through the whole grant process, let them know what grants are available, help them with technical and financial advice throughout the whole process. So next slide. Thank you. And then just very quickly, some of the solutions, again, coming from the talk we had on July 10th, a community approach. So again, that's the community energy hubs. There needs to be a built trust with communities. Ideally, it would be someone who's local and known to the area. There's examples out of Wexford where they sent a survey out to about 80 households. They got 69 respondents back and found that people had no idea what grants were actually available to them. They didn't truly understand energy poverty. They didn't know their house could be more efficient, essentially. And so the community held a talk, and they had someone in there working with these people. And within a fortnight, I think they had about 50 applications come through from that town meeting. It covered previously improving the grants, allow single measures, allow point of sale for grant improvements. So let the grant come in when you buy the materials, rather than having to do the full works with an approved contractor and then getting paid the grants. There is an upfront cost to households, which is a very big barrier for a lot of people, where they need to cover the full cost and then the grant comes in at the end, which isn't ideal for low income areas. And then communication improvement, clear up the information around the grants, widen what's considered vulnerable households. I think currently there's a strong focus on kind of low income social housing level and elderly people, but also tenants are vulnerable, because if you're a tenant living in someone else's house, you are paying the bills, you're suffering the consequences, but you have no ability to change that circumstance for yourself. And also middle to low income are in the same area. New parents would be in that same kind of bracket. So just widening that definition and kind of moving away from the term energy poor as well. And then looking at other things other than cost and energy savings, looking at health benefits as well, to kind of try and widen what's available for people. So I'm probably went over my 5 minutes there, but you're still muted.
There I am. Perfect. Thank you, Colin. Let's move on then with Marta from Experiences from Spain.
Thank you, Christina. What I'm presenting today is the result of a working session with municipalities and experts, beneficiaries from the first and second EPAH call for technical assistance. So they are professionals and people already tackling energy poverty. So this is what we resulted from the working session. So in terms of challenges at local level, participants identify in general from the local or supramunicipal authorities a lack of technical, human, and economic resources in general, a lack of capacity building and knowledge in terms of energy and energy poverty, and a lack of data or the way to compile or to combine national data with local indicators. Also, they consider there are complex procedures and difficult to fulfill, like, for example, grants for renovation. I mean, it's difficult for anyone, but for those in a situation of vulnerability, it's even more complex. I mean, it's what is called asymmetric information. I mean, who has access to the information at the end? No? And then they also identify some challenges, some transversal challenges as the regulatory framework in the EU. For example, although a lot has been done in the last years, a lot has to be done still to protect even more vulnerable, those in a situation of vulnerability, for example, trying to work and recognizing worldwide energy as a human right, and then that would be easy then to make some protections and some protective measures. And also a lack of transversal coordination among different actors working in the field. Next slide, please, Christina. And then in terms of solutions proposed for those municipalities and supramunicipalities authorities participating in the session 2 weeks ago here in Barcelona, some of the ideas was to increase municipal resources and in terms of staff, to promote more one-stop shops, specifically focus on those in a situation of vulnerability, and also, for example, focus in those rural areas. Maybe the big cities, they already have specific one-stop shops on energy poverty. For example, the one we have here in Barcelona, that we reach around 30,000 vulnerable consumers per year, but in rural areas, they don't have this support. So that would be an interesting idea. The coordination and strategic vision between and amongst stakeholders to improve data access at local level, to simplify procedures and access to information to all users, to build capacity among different stakeholders, for example, social services or health professionals, establish of protocols to identify, and this is what Colin said, who is vulnerable and who is not vulnerable. At local level, there are sometimes difficulties to have like the details of who should be or who is in a situation of vulnerability or not in terms of energy. And also specific actions are needed or would be interesting to have to counteract the power of different energy actors. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marta. And we continue with Marina from Italy.
Thanks, Christina. Hello, everyone. I am Marina Vertesi, and I'm here to present what were the outcomes of our national event as in Spain, we had an event a week ago addressing only the municipalities and the experts working on energy poverty. So those who are already aware and are already facing the problem. The invited municipalities were the ones who participated in the 2 calls of EPA, and also the ones working on the mission of net zero energy. Okay, so having said that, what we realized is that there is a lot going on in Italy to tackle energy poverty, even though there is not really an energy poverty frame or policy. So there are these are local initiatives, and there is, I can anticipate that there is the need to harmonize and put everything in a sort of holistic manner to tackle energy poverty. Some of the solutions that are being applied in Italy are the ones of shops, integration of different operators, implementation of building renovation and retrofitting. And we are in an initial stage of mapping diagnosis. That means not only what the energy poverty dimension is, but also who are the actors and what actions that they are delivering on a very, very local level. We have some very good examples. This brings me the need to specify that in Italy, we don't have a definition of energy poverty. So when I say that all these solutions are being tackled, I mean, yes, they do address energy poverty, but in a more general manner, not specifically in a way that energy poverty is defined, and therefore those are the solutions. What came out as some policy ideas, so as Christina was saying, if we had the keys to define an ideal world, the first thing is the holistic manner to tackle energy poverty. That means integrating all the different actors and all the different, we will see it in the next slides, policies. There is really the need to put everything together in a common way to tackle energy poverty. The gender mainstreaming also was mentioned, even though one of the things is that, as for the other 2 countries, also in Italy, we lack data, so it is very difficult to know what in depth this gender actually is. And together with the lack of data, but also this was already said, there is a lack of knowledge of the same local authorities on what is energy poverty, what they need to do, how to tackle it. And well, no need to say that this is why they participated to the EPA calls and are following the activities of EPA. And always considering an holistic manner to tackle energy poverty, it came out that it would be good to not only put together actions, activities, but also the different financial measures that may be or are being open in Italy. So to systemize everything, Christina, can I have the next slide, please? And just some other inputs. So on this, I would underline the fact that we need some interactive database with data that can dialogue and be compared. The need to align the various policies, I think I've already stressed that enough, but we definitely do need that. And thinking of the data, one of the main suggestions was to oblige utilities to share their data sets in terms of at least of energy consumptions in an aggregated manner, because that would really help in the diagnosis of the energy poverty problem at a local level. That's it from Italy. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Marina. And we move on to Cyprus. Marina, if you can unmute yourself, let's see.
Yes, hello.
Thank you.
Hello from Cyprus. Our national event took place in Platres, which is a local authority on the mountains of Cyprus. So we gathered representatives of local authorities in the area and some other regions of the island. So the specificity of these local authorities that are on the mountains of Cyprus and other remote areas in the island is that they are generally vulnerable to different energy poverty risks because they are shrinking communities with aging population. So the challenges that we face in this case is that there is a limited technical capacity of these local authorities, and this often is also administrative capacities because we're talking about very small communities. And in small and rural remote areas, energy poverty action really depends on the motivation and initiative of individuals that are coming from the councils or from the staff. So it's something that it really depends and cannot be sustainable in the long run. But even in bigger municipalities, even where there is a technical capacity, challenge is that officers often work in silos. So social workers maybe don't often interact with technical services. So there are some bureaucratic procedures that we need to face for the first time. So we need to overcome this situation. And this is a barrier for understanding the phenomenon of energy poverty in a holistic way at the local level. Another challenge is also the legal and financial limitations of local authorities in Cyprus, because as a small island, it's a very centralized state. So the local authorities have very limited power in taking initiatives and implementing actions that impact the household level. So in terms of policies, we generally think that there needs to be policy restructuring to include more categories in vulnerable energy consumers and to improve in general the definition of energy poverty based on the current socioeconomic situation in Cyprus. From our experience, there is an obvious issue of intersectionality, something that the other Marina also mentioned about the gender dimension and so many other factors that make individuals and households to fall in these disadvantaged groups and have a higher risk of becoming energy poor. So the support that needs to be provided to vulnerable users should be done with the use of scales and based on the intersection with other factors and other social criteria, instead of having a universal support looking at one dimension of energy poverty and vulnerability. So the policy in terms of in the sectors of urban planning also and mobility needs to be improved to make public transport universally and equally accessible, because we have seen in these remote areas in Cyprus, a lot of people are choosing not to work because working means moving by car, and that makes it very difficult for them to depend. I mean, financially, it's a very big burden for households to move by car to get to work. So in some cases, it's actually more sustainable financially not to work rather than having a job that needs them to move long distances. So this is something that we also identified. And the public health dimensions are not very strengthened in the policy. So we recommend that they are integrated in all policy areas in order to considering the negative impacts of the lack of sustainable energy solutions, and as well as the impacts of climate change. And we are talking now we have a heat waves in Cyprus, and it's a very terrible situation, even for people living in the mountains, which is in a higher altitude. It's a very critical moment of the year. Social housing is limited in Cyprus, but policy should be improved to avoid the risk of energy poverty, and policy should be fixed in order to protect people in poverty in general. So the changes that we recommend are in order to protect rented households, because in some cases the tenants are charged more in order to pay for the energy renovations, and that leads to phenomena like gentrification because the prices are rising. So this is another area that we think could complement in improving the whole policy, the policy landscape of Cyprus. If we go to the last slide of the solutions, we suggest that in these remote areas, the transport can be improved by providing on-demand solutions because of the low number of populations. So that would increase their accessibility to services such as education and work. So the design, the distribution and provision of services from the national authorities must avoid inequalities to rural and shrinking areas. Another solution is what we already provide through the technical assistance program of the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub. Technical support to customize solution to these small remote local authorities to raise awareness and to increase their knowledge on energy poverty and to increase their capacity in tackling this phenomenon with local solutions. So they also need to be more aware on the opportunities that there are. So subsidies and local actions, solutions that are out there. Yes, I think I've covered everything. Oh, there is only one point in the end. Yes, so the streamlining of the process of subsidies. We see that sometimes vulnerable consumers have difficulties from benefiting from subsidies because the process of getting the refund is not streamlined yet. So they cannot wait for the refund. So there needs to be a better process of doing the investment and getting the payment for it from the subsidy. So there needs to be a way to encourage the private sector and the industry who provide energy equipment to collaborate and support the vulnerable consumers, and the government needs to do some specific arrangements in order to facilitate the process, because very often the vulnerable groups, they cannot even do the initial investment for upgrading their house or their equipment. That's it.